Yeah.
18 years here, we don't know.
He lived in, they had rented in Yarmouth A, in Yarmouth for a year, and then they bought in Wolverton. And he had been the regional director of Hillel organization in the greater Philadelphia area for quite a number of years. He had a YU background, and
Related to Nissan outfit?
that I don't know. That I don't know.
All right, I'll put mine on.
But
Just remind me to take, well, I can't take off my bill.
so we will get started momentarily. But
Fire down here. Or
probably up north. Probably up north. Just was a very, it reminds you that life is fleeting. You have to.
You get more and more reminders.
Unfortunately, yeah. Okay. Learning sponsors, A Year of Learning by Sue and Arnie Garelick in memory of Malcolm Proman and Philip Mann and Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Beryl ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Yosef Meir ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Henry Rivka Prorazna bat Arav Tzvi Hirsch, in memory of family murdered in the Holocaust, Arav Tzvi Hirsch ben Shlomo Yaakov, Sarah bat Ephraim, Yisrael David ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Ephraim ben Arav Tzvi Hirsch, Hadiya bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Miriam bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Pesel bat Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shalom ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shlomo Yaakov ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch, Shmuel ben Harav Tzvi Hirsch. Sharon and Fred Lisker, their family and many friends, in memory of her dear mom, Harriet Friedman, Elbas Yaakov, Leslie and Gail Kaplan, in memory of their parents, Harry and Marjorie Sedell, Irving and Pearl Kaplan, friends of Avi Gidler, Avram Meir ben Shimon, and Martha Gidler, Charna bat Yeshaya. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of Toby Paris, Saratova bat Yisrael Dov in her memory. Friends of Joe Wolf, Yosef ben Chaim, Charlie Gelfenstein and Sam Levine in memory of Ramona Levine, Rachel Mata bat Asher. Friends of Nina Moinester, Nechama Asna bat Yitzchak Aharon. Many friends of Stephen Vigdor, L'zecher Nishmat Simcha Melech ben Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz, in memory of her great niece, Leah Bracha. A Month of Learning by Haran and Mel Haller, in memory of her mother, Malka Rachel bat Yehuda Leib. Be Pizer, in memory of her husband, Arav Yisrael Chaim ben David. Tova and Leo Zimmer, in memory of her mother, Hanya bat Rav Beryl, and her father, Aaron ben Yosef Mordechai. Perry and Jill Meltzer, in memory of his mother, Malka bas Baruch, and his sister, Goldalea bas David Halevi. Stanley Presser, in memory of his mother-in-law, Golda bat Labor, his mother, Leah bat Yehuda, and his wife, Ruchel Mincha bas Moshe. Carol and Josh Sanborn, in memory of her father, Yoshua Shia ben Moshe Yehuda HaKohen. David and Sharon Carpel, in memory of his father, Zeb Moshe ben Shlomo Yaakov. A Week of Learning by Sylvia Gudis, in memory of her mother, Devorah bas Ruvain Chaim, by Sam Levine and Charlie Gelfenstein, in memory of Sam's parents and Charles' in-laws, Livsha bat Avram Shammai, Yechiel Michel ben Arav Alexander Ziskin. Today we have, a Day of Learning plus Torah Fund by Gary and Toby Greenstein, in memory of his mother, Henya Rachel bas Shlomo, and the Green family, and member of birthday. Okay.
And in honor of the birthday, I think it's appropriate before we go on to sing happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
No
you.
need.
Happy birthday, Samuel. Happy birthday, everybody. Happy birthday to you.
Thank Well, that's up to the Ibisher, not up to me. All right. Okay. Ruvain, good morning.
That did knock off the
Yes, it
Zoom.
is.
What?
Hope it didn't knock off the Zoom.
Okay, and Harvey, you on? Okay, right,
The only birthday I'm not.
is Pharaoh's,
is Yom Haledet Hara.
right. Okay, Avi Friedman. Not here today, okay, Avi hopefully got on. Okay. So where we're gonna start today, on the bottom of Yud Amud Beis, last line. Okay, Yud Amud Beis, last line. I don't know what it is. I'm sure it's Art Scroll. It's 10B3, something like that. Right?
B3.
Right?
Whoa.
Okay.
Mr. Novi as well as a birthday.
Okay. So what we pick up here is just an interesting connection. All right. We were saying about the Gemara is ending with the idea of the concept of Hefsed Meruba, okay, that there could be a major loss. Prakmatia kol shahu is the language of the Gemara. Prakmatia ha'avud dami vishari, and therefore it was permitted, okay? That was given by permission by Rav Ashi for Ravina to go and collect debts from people at a certain location.
Because they were around.
All right, because they are found during they're present in that location on Chol Hamoed. Okay? And so the last line of the Gemara on Yud Amud Beis, okay, continues with that motif, and it's ultimately going to lead us onto the last Amud of the first chapter. Okay, Tanya Nami Hachi, and another bright that teaches Gabe Avoda Zara. Okay, in regards to non-Jews. Okay, and the implication is the fact that the Gemara is going to tell us in a moment about the fact that there were certain, what I'll call for the moment, fairs, F-A-I-R, okay, that were held in medieval, but before medieval times. The reason I make the connection with medieval times is because in my course in Rashi that I'm giving, we talk about the fact that in the city from which Rashi came from, the city of Troy, France, twice a year, there were these large-scale fairs where people would display their wares and sales and all sorts of things. Okay, and so this was something in existence in the time of Chazal, okay, and all the way through to the Middle Ages. Okay, and the question was, were Jews permitted to participate at all in these fairs? Okay, because of the fact that the Gentile displayers would often utilize their financial gain and use it for Avodah Zarah purposes. That's what I wanted to clarify. That's why the Gemara says, Gabe Avodah Zarah, Ki Hai Gavna, like in this situation, Hochim Liyarid, that they go, Shel Akum, that they go to these fairs that are under the sponsorship or with participation of Gentiles.
This fair is like by Xmas or by
Well,
Easter, you know, or whatever.
The implication is, okay, in other words, that they held these fairs and that their money gained would therefore be applied to these non-Jewish holidays, which was part of Avodah Zarah. So that was the issue. That's what we're going to see in the Gemara. Okay, in just a moment.
Not at a holiday time, it was no question. It was only their holiday.
Okay, it's their holiday. Okay, so the question is, let's take an example that we can relate to. Take the example of Easter, okay, which comes oftentimes close enough to Pesach where you have a serious question of Chol HaMoed. So that's the time frame that I'm suggesting that the Gemara is sensitive to. Okay, so what does the Gemara tell us now as we continue on the top of Yud Aleph, Amud Aleph, right? What happens? Why do we say that we're permitting Jews to participate? Velochim behema, avadim u'shvachot, batim u'sadot ukramim, because at those occasions they may not only permit the purchase of animals, male servants, female servants, houses, fields, vineyards. Not only that, but, says our text, v'kotev u'ma'aleh ba'archaot shalahen, that you can even on Chol HaMoed write down the documents, the bills of sale, the deeds,
And
things like
register.
that, register them in the Gentile courts. Okay, right? Shalahen. Why? Mipnei shehu kimatzil miyadan. Because it is if you are saving them from, okay, all these items from Gentile property, from Gentile ownership. Okay? Okay. So having said that, okay, as I said, that's served later on. This piece in the Gemara serves later on for a clear model, okay, in terms of,
And for reneging on the sale also.
okay, by the time of the Middle Ages. Yeah. Okay. So yes.
Why do I remember Mishnah 3 days before, don't you shouldn't do any dealing?
Exactly. Right, because that's in Avodah Zarah, right? A discussion that you should not be involved in any business with them.
Can't sell them to them.
Right. But the implication there is that you don't want them to acquire items, okay, because they may use, for example, let's take, I'm going to use Rashi again from my other shiur, okay, or other Jews that were in the wine business. This was a big issue in the time of Rashi, and Rashi actually wrote a responsa on this issue as to whether or not Jewish vineyard owners could produce wine and sell it to Gentiles, lest the wine be used in general for Avodah Zarah, not just for their holidays. Okay, so that was okay. So now we go on, right?
You're saying that the Jews brought all these things up so that the Gentiles shouldn't be able to buy them?
Shouldn't they have ownership of these things? Because what happens if a Jew were to purchase an individual who became the servant in the Jewish household? What was the normal?
He becomes Jewish.
He eventually becomes, all right, remember we said that a Gentile servant has the same obligations as a woman in terms of fulfillment of mitzvot, okay? And when the person is freed, they actually become
A full Jew.
a full Jew, okay? So that is the underlying background behind this. Okay, good question.
That's why it's allowed, because.
Yeah.
Yes,
Not
because,
just there's a sale now, and that's why you're buying it.
no,
But the idea is the building you buy won't have Salem in it.
things like that.
The girl you buy won't.
Do business with them, right?
I didn't make.
Oh, the Gentiles? Absolutely, absolutely. That's-
Somebody has to pay retail.
Actually, absolutely. By the way, just as an aside, and I'm teaching this again with my Rashi class, because Rashi lived in Troy and was familiar with these fairs, he knew that there would be Jewish merchants traveling from other locations, particularly from parts of Germany, from parts of Italy, from parts of Spain. So that was a means by which Rashi was able to acquire additional manuscripts for his library and his yeshiva, okay, and things like that. Okay, okay, particularly from Germany. Okay, that's a discussion for another time. Okay. Anyway, going back now. So what happens? Rav Shara Lechia Bar Ashi. Rav permitted Shia Bar Ashi to do what? Lemigdal Ahare Bechola de Moada. He permitted him to weave traps. Okay, these were traps, as we're going to see and get into more detail in regarding fishing. Okay, anybody who's interested in fishing, you're going to have a whole lesson in fishing and cooking fish and eating fish, today's Gemara. Okay, it's a lot of fish stories, if you ask me. All right, okay. My Tama, what was the reason that he permitted him to weave traps, these kind of traps? Maaseh Yatu, that this was a common thing. They usually took baskets and they connected baskets on a rope, dipping it in the water. And if a fish swam, and they put, of course, something inside the basket for the fish to go in. And then when you pull up the rope, the cover of the basket would flop down and catch the fish inside. And that was how it was done.
So it's not a skill.
It wasn't a skill, right? As opposed to aval isle, more complex nets that were made by what we'll call for the moment professionals. Okay, asur, that's forbidden. All right, my tama, what's the reasoning? Maaseh umanhu, because in those cases they were made by a professional. Okay, a regular fisherman that did this. Okay, as well. Okay, Rav Yehuda, another example. Rav Yehuda, Shara la'ami tanura. Rav Yehuda permitted Ami, the oven maker, okay, lamigdal tanure, to construct ovens. Rabbi, okay, bar asvi lamigdal mahulta, and he permitted Rabbi bar asve to construct sieves, right? Aini, is that really the case? Vahatani, aren't we taught Rabba bar Shmuel, in the name of Rabba bar Shmuel? Vishavin, we all agree, she'ein godlin tanur lechatchila, that we do not construct a oven initially. Lo kasha, that's not necessarily problematic. Kan biyamotachama, in one case, says the argument, we're talking about the summer months, okay, where, right, why? Because the warm weather will allow the clay of the oven to dry quicker and therefore be usable on Yom Tov. Kan b'yamot hagshamim, and we prohibit it in the rainy season, the winter, because the clay won't dry in time to be able to use the oven for Yom Tov if it's made on Chol HaMoed.
The heter here is that it's for food purposes.
Right. Okay, let's go on. Right, as we continue, matnitin. Okay, osim maka lagag ulamirpeset. We can make some sort of a metal parapet, right? As a protection, a wall, a fence. We call it a ramp, or not a ramp, a railing. Okay, another those kinds of things.
Yeah, but only, well, you'll see.
All right, ma'aseh hedyat. Okay, as is done by a common person. All right, you can't go out and hire. Okay, somebody. Avalo ma'aseh oman, but you can't hire Moshe the. Okay, one of these.
Moshe the Makkah maker.
Whatever, one of a professional. Okay, not only that, says the Mishnah. Shafin et hasadakin. We can plaster holes. Uma'agilin otan b'ma'agila. And we can roll them with a roller. This was either a wooden or a stone roller. This was an implement. Biyad u'baregel. As you would with your hand or with your foot. Okay? Avalo b'mechaltzayim chad, okay? But not with a mechaltzayim, which according to a trowel, okay, is the best explanation. based on a manuscript Rashi. Okay,
If you make a marker that's not good, not professionally, it could be dangerous.
well,
You'll
but
put it up, you'll repair it.
what happens after Yom Tov, then you come back and you do it. Okay. Remember, they had flat roofs. Okay, and there was always that fear that, and they used the roofs for various things. We've seen they use the roofs for drying produce, for example, or for other things.
They slept there.
Okay. All right, going on now. Now, these are things, notice we're beginning to see that there's, after having, I want to just point out real quick and then we jump back in. We're beginning to see that there is a clear question here of tircha, of what effort, okay? But there's also a clear question here of hefsed, of loss. Now we've introduced something that we've been referring to, the difference between work by a common person, or the average person, versus work that's been done by a professional. Okay. Now, are there times when there could be a situation, okay, that something occurs and that for the sake of safety or protection or other things, you might need to have it done on Yom Tov?
We had it with the tottering wall.
We had it, the example, right, with the tottering wall. Now we're going to see other examples, okay? Hatzir, which is a hinge, vahatzinor, or which is this, okay, or the cylinder that is part of the hinge, okay? Vahakoreh, or a cross beam, all right? Right? Vahamanul, or the lock, vahamafteach, or the key, okay? Shenishbaru, if any of these things become broken on, okay, metaknin b'moed, it's permissible to have them repaired on Chol HaMoed. Ubilvad shalo yitkavein la'asot melachto b'moed. So long as there's no intent, okay, to think, well, oh, I'll let it go another day or two, and then I'll have the guy, then I'll do it on Yom Tov.
But it doesn't say who fixes it, whether it's the individual or the professional.
Let's,
Could be a professional.
it could be something that we need to see, since it's in the Mishnah. Does the Gemara come back and deal with that? Right. Okay. V'chol kavshin, and anything that's you're going to pickle, shahu yachol le'echol mehen b'moed, that's the intent is to eat it as part of your meal on Chol HaMoed. Okay. And we just don't mean gherkins. Okay. We could, okay, it could be beets, it could be fish, it could be other kinds of things. Kov shan. It's permissible. Okay. Okay. We'll see. Gemara. Hechidami ma'aseh yet. What do we mean when we say that it's the act of a common person? Okay. Rav Yosef Amar. Okay. Behutza v'dafna. Okay. All right, he's saying when we're talking about, well, it wasn't just the marker. The Mishnah originally referred here to a breach in the wall. How do you fix the breach in the wall?
We dealt with that.
Right. So now, well, we're dealing both. Okay. What do? What do you use? Palm or bay tree branches, right? B'matnita tana. And in our Mishnah, we teach as follows. Okay. Tsar, b'tzror, ve'eno tachbatit. Okay. Our Mishnah taught that you take a stone and you put it, okay, stick a stone in the breach of the wall, ve'eno tachbatit, but you don't plaster it whatsoever. Okay, so the Gemara says now, safin et stakin uma'agilinotan. Okay, that we plaster these breaks, these breaches, and we can roll them. Okay, but ma'agila, with this roller, they said, actually, we should know, by the way, that they actually discovered such items archaeologically, and they have them on display in certain places. Okay. Hashta b'magila amart share. Here you said with a ma'agila, with this roller, it's permitted. Biyad b'regel mibaye, with a hand or with a foot. Why do we even have to ask that? If you say you can use an instrument, a utensil, why then do we have to say any discussion of a hand or using a foot to smooth something, right? Hachikama, this is what it means to tell us. Safin et hasdekin umagilinotam ke'ein ma'agila. We plaster of the breaches, okay, and roll with a kind of something similar to a roller, biyad uberegel, as with one's hand or with one's foot, avalo b'mechaltzayim, but not with a trowel. Okay, hatzir v'hatzinor v'hakore. We said again, the hinge or the cylinder of the hinge or the crossbeam, v'hamanol, or the lock, v'hamafteach, or the key, shenishbaru mitaknan b'moed. Our Mishnah said that one can have them repaired on Chol HaMoed, or minhe, but we'll contradict this with the following bright. Okay, and this actually is a statement in Maaser Sheni, chapter 5, number 15, dealing with the days of Yochanan, the high priest, where it tells us there, Ad Yamav Hayapatish Makeb Yerushalayim. Up till his time, you could hear hammers hammering in Jerusalem. Okay, on Chol HaMoed, right? The Chuli Ad Yamav in Mikan ve'elach lo. Up to his days, yes. From there on, no. Lo kasha. Here, maybe we say there's no problem. Why? Kan b'dinefchai. In one case, we're talking about hammers used by smithies. That's very noisy. Kan b'dinagrai. And in another case, we're talking about carpenters' hammers that make far less noise. Matkifla Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda challenges this with a bright. Yomru kala rabba asir, kala zutar shari. Does this mean to tell us that loud noises are forbidden and less noise is permitted? Ela amar Rav Chisda lo kasha. Okay, so why does Rav Chisda say no? He's going to give us a different kind of explanation. And he says as follows, Lo kasha, why? Ha b'magle, ha b'chatzine. In one case, we're talking about use of sickles, and in another case, we're talking about use of chisels. So again, one is one makes one kind of a major cut in noise, one makes another cut and much less noise. Rav Papa Amar. Now Rav Papa gives us an alternative explanation again. Amar kan kodem gzera, kan la'achar gzera. In one case, it was before a decree. In another case, it was after a decree. Rav Ashi Amar. Says Rav Ashi, ha Rabbi Yehuda, ha Rabbi Yossi. No, one was a statement of Rabbi Yehuda, one was the statement of Rabbi Yossi. Why? The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, as said by Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, Man Tana, Shinuye b'moed b'davar ha'avud. Who is the Tana that says there is something unique or different regarding Chol HaMoed when there's a sense of loss? Okay, when there's
You have to do it with the shinui.
okay, and that in that case, it would only be permitted, okay, to be done in a different manner, okay? The Loka Rabbi Yossi, that doesn't seem to be like Rabbi Yossi, who permits labor, okay, preventing financial loss, even when done in the usual manner. That's the important implication here. That Rabbi Yossi would have said, no, go ahead, you're going to have a financial loss. That takes precedence over, in a sense, tircha, and therefore you could do it in a normal method. All right, now.
The noise was the noise, or was it the issue of the fear for the work?
The noise.
Noise, in that
So
case.
if he did, let's say he was blowing a horn, making a lot of noise, so that would be usher?
That would be us. All right.
So music would be usher?
That's the question. All right,
Don't
there's certainly
answer
no
that.
tircha there. That's an
There's
issue.
a canon that you're not allowed to listen to music since the base of it.
Well, that's a different issue, right?
We don't.
Amar, okay, let's go on. Ravina is going to give another example. Ravina says as follows: Kiman medalinan ha'idna kivyuta darsha bichola demoada. He says, what about the issue of lifting the lintel of a door on Chol Hamoed?
Replacing it.
Okay, you have, okay, now, what are we talking about? We all know you have mezuzahs on the side posts, and then you have a piece on top. That's the lintel. Okay, all right. So, what about if that needs to be replaced on Chol Hamoed? Is that problematic? Keman, ke Rabbi Yossi. It was, who was it? Rabbi Yossi again, who would permit normal work, okay, in that situation. Okay, let's take another example. Kivshan, shehu yachol la'achol b'moed. Okay, kvashin, I'm sorry. Shehu yachol la'achol b'moed. Kovshin, things that are going to be pickled, okay, to be eaten on the holiday may be pickled. Okay, so what are we talking about here? Okay, so let's see what happens. All right. Bidaita lebai kivare. Okay, we're talking about the Bedita River that overflowed with fish. Okay, Azil Kuli
But here we have, they drained the river and now the fish are flopping on the riverbed.
Okay, either way, that's still the same river and the same situation. Okay, so what happens? You've got fish that somehow are now on dry land. Okay, what happened? The people, Azil, Kuli, Alma, Sud, they all went out and caught them, right? Right. Aitu, Kravra, they brought the fish. And what were they going to do? Shara laho Rabba, the mimlach minaihu. And Rabba permitted them to pickle, salt the fish.
Even
Preserve
though they
them.
wouldn't be ready till
Okay.
after you-
And that meant, number one, that was the question. We said you could do it only if you were going to eat the fish on Yontif. But if you're pickling it, okay, the implication is A, that they were not going to eat it on Yontif, but eat it afterwards. Or B, the issue was that the pickling process would take a certain amount of time and therefore, again, would not allow one to be able to eat it on Yontif.
Loss of money if you don't.
All right, well, we'll see. That's what's going to be the question.
Yeah, but no, once you have the fish, it's
Loss of money.
yeah.
Well, let's see. Let's see. Guys, come on. All right, let's go on. All right, Amar le Abaye. So Abaye says as follows, Vahatnan. But aren't we taught in a Mishnah? Kvashin shehu yachol le'echol mehen b'moed. Kvashin. That items may be pickled if they're going to be eaten on the holiday itself. You can pickle it on Chol Hamoed. That can be pickled. Amarle, and he said to him, Kevan de meikara ada'ata da'achila aitnaihu. Since originally it was their view, their opinion, their perspective that it was going to, that they brought it back for the purpose of eating, right? Ve'ishavik laho pasde, and if they leave them, they're going to be ruined. Kip rakmatia ha'abud dami. It is like the loss of merchandise. Okay? Vishari and permitted. Okay. Ve'ikada amre. And there are those, however, who phrase this discourse in the following manner. Shari lahu Rabba mitzad. That Rabba permitted them to catch the fish, or gather the fish, right? Mezal, they went. Aituye, they brought. Umemlach, and they salted them. Amar le Abaye, and Abaye says, Vaha anan kivashin shehu yachol le'echol mehen kovshan. But here, aren't we pickling them so that they should be able to be eaten? And that's the reason for pickling and permitted. Tanan, isn't that what was taught in the Mishnah? Amarle, and Rava responds, Hani nami mit achle agav itzitza. Here too, they can be eaten based on pressing. In other words, pressing the salt and brine out of the fish. Okay? Kiha de Shmuel, like that of Shmuel, Avdule Shitin Itzitze, who did this by having 60 pressings on the fish, va'achal, and ate it. Not only that, but we've got another story. Rava iklelebe reish galuta, that one time Rava came to the house of the reish galuta, and what did they do? Avdile shitin itzitze va'achal. They pressed again the salted fish and brine, the salt and brine out of the fish 60 times, and he ate it.
How to have herring at the kid.
Right? Rav iklelebe Rav Shapir. And another story, Rav came to the house of Rav Shapir. Okay, maybe his name was really Shapiro, right? I to the Kamaihu, and what did they bring him? Listen to this meal. Hahu kavra tilta bishula, and they brought him fish that was 1/3 cooked, right? Tilta milcha, 1/3 was salted. Vitilta tavya, and 1/3 broiled. Okay, Amar Rav says, Amar li adat saida. And now Rav is going to tell us his a few stories about conversations with a professional fisherman. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Rav tells us, I was told by Ada the fisherman, kavra, fish, when is the best time to eat it? Samuch lemisrache, when it's close to being spoiled. Ma'ale, that's the best. That's when it's significant. Okay? Interesting enough, by the way, Tosafot has a very clear statement. Don't wait.
Things have changed.
Right. Okay?
He doesn't say they were wrong. He said
Right.
that
He just says you don't eat it then. Va'amar Rav, and then Rav tells another story. Amarli adat saida. Ada the fisherman told me the following. Kavra tavyaya ba'achva. Fish that is broiled in its brother. Now, why is it called brother? It's salt, because salt comes from the sea, just as the fish come from the sea. Asuka ba'avuha, and you put it in its father, namely you cook it in water. Michle bebare, you eat it with its son, namely the brine, the juice that comes out of the fish. Ishte ale avuha, and afterwards you drink it with its father, namely with water. Okay. Further story. Va'amar Rav amarli adat saida, and Rav says, Ada the fisherman told me the following. Kavra, fish, tachle v'chalva lit'on gufa. When you have cress and then milk, okay, and you eat it with them, okay, afterwards. Lo lit'on puria, okay, don't, I'm sorry, the cress and milk, lit'on gufa, that can be beneficial for the body. Velo lit'on puria, but don't let it's not beneficial to go immediately to bed. Okay.
You should take a walk. First.
Okay. In other words, before you don't eat it and then try to go right to sleep. Okay. Va'amar Rava says Rava Marley Atzada Adatzada, again a story by Ada the fisherman. Kavra, fish, and in this case Tachli, eating cress, v'chalva and milk. Okay, what should you do if you've had fish, cress, and milk? Maya lo shikra, drink water and not beer, shikra velo chamra, or beer and not wine. Okay, hadran alach mashkin beit hashlachim. Okay,
So if you-
all right. So we go on now to a new parak, and this new parak, as we now jump in, is going to want to deal with other kinds of issues pertaining to workers. All right, and when they work, may they work on Chol Hamoed, or may they not work on Chol Hamoed,
for other situations.
and other occasions that we're going to compare to Chol Hamoed. Okay, one occasion that we might all think of when a person would have to refrain from work would be Shiva, Avelis, exactly. Okay, good. All right, so we're now ready. Okay, to explain the beginning of this new parak and this new Mishnah. Okay, I just want to clarify. The Mishnah starts, Mi shehafach et zeitav, one who has turned over piles of olives. And the reason you do that is because when you pile the olives, it creates heat, but too much length of time as a pile will result in spoilage of the olives. And therefore you won't get good quality olive oil. Okay, so there is a question here of hefsed, exactly. All right, so now that we can go on. Mi shehafachet zeitav, one who has turned over the olives. V'iro evel, and it occurs at that time when he's working that he becomes an avel. All right, or onus, or because there's some accident or something and he can't continue, right? Oh, shehita poalim, or here the workers tricked him.
They
And
don't
those-
show up.
They said they were going to come and do the work, and exactly they don't show up. To'en kore rishona. It is permitted then on Chol Hamoed for him to place, okay, right? Okay, it is permitted for him to put a beam, okay, on the olives to press, okay, if he does so initially, okay, the first pressing of the olives, all right? Umanicha la'achar ha'moed, okay, and then afterwards, he finishes the pressing, okay, after the holiday. Divrei Rebbe Yehuda, that's the view of Rebbe Yehuda. Rebbe Yossi says, Omer as follows, Zolef v'gomer v'gaf kedarko, that he may press and finish and plug the barrels that will contain the oil in a normal manner. In other words, he can do the entire process. Okay, finish the work. Okay, that not only don't you need a shinui, that there is no difference between the first pressing and a later
As long
pressing.
as there's loss.
Okay, because there's the question of hefsei, right? That's why we pointed that out at the outset. Okay, that there is that concern of sport. Okay, Gemara. Patach ba'avel v'siyem b'moed. It begins, the Mishnah begins with talking about Avelis and then continues and finishes up with trying to compare it to Chol Hamoed. Amar Rav Shisha Berei de Rab Idi. He says as follows, Zot omeret, this seems to tell us, Davarim hamutarim b'moed, asurim b'yimei evlo. Things that are permitted on Chol Hamoed are forbidden at the time, during the time of his Avelis, a mourning. Rav Ashi Amar lo mebaye Amar. Rav Ashi says, no, we need to understand this in the format of a lo mebaye statement. Okay, what is that? Lo mebaye, it's not necessary. I'm going to translate it for the time being in that manner. B'yamei evlo midirabanan. Why? During the days of his mourning, because those are rabbinically structured. Hu v'shari. Okay, and that's permitted. El afilu b'moed, but even on moed, the isur malachami deoraita, where the prohibition of work is a Torah mandated, b'makom psida, in a situation of loss, sharu rabbanan, the rabbis permitted. Okay. Tanya kivate de Rav Shisha, bere de Rav Idi. And there's a Braita that teaches according to this view of Rav Shisha, the son of Rav Idi. Elid varim haosim la'avel b'yomei evlo. These are the things that can be done. Okay. And la'avel, okay, one might translate it on behalf of the mourner. Okay, I think is a good translation. All right, namely the following. Okay, Zetav hafuchin to unim lo. If his olives again have been turned over, all right, we can, right, what to? Okay, to anim lo. We can load them into the press, the olive press. Okay, all right, for his benefit. V'chado laguf. Okay, and if he has a barrel, it can be plugged. Upashtano lahalot min hamisra, and his flax to take it up out of the soaking pool. That again is a situation where you put the flax in for a certain amount of time. The water allows the top part of the flax to dissolve, and then you can get your material. But if it remains in the water too long, therefore it's going to dissolve the good part, okay? And you won't have any product to use to make linen, okay? What happens? So there's a hefsed question there, okay? V'tsamro laha'alot min hayoreh, right? And then again, a case, and this is his wool in order to take it out of the cauldron. All right, so again, he's dyeing, okay, the product, D-Y-I-N-G. Okay.
Somebody else died.
Okay, all right. Umar bitzim sadehu. Okay, and what happens? Mishatagia onat hamayim shalom. And he can even open up the gates or the fields or the channels to irrigate, okay, the field if it is his turn, okay, to benefit him, because he can't do it as an Avil. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says as follows, Af zorin lo sadeh mir, that we can even plant the seeds in a plowed field for him. V'sodeh ha'omered lepishtan, or a field that is ready for planting of flax. Amrulo, they said to him, Imlo tizra b'bachir. But the Gemara raises a question. Couldn't you argue in regarding to planting seeds, if you can't plant for the early harvest, tizra ba'afel, let him plant for the later harvest. Imlo tizra pishtan, tizra mimin acher. If he can't plant for flax, let him plant for some other item. Okay. All right. In other words, again, why are you including that as an example of something that of a worker who could work in place of the in oven? All right. So we see as follows. In other words, implying, by the way, that the rabbis did not permit it. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Omer, he says, Zetav hafuchim, if the olives have been turned over, ve'ein sham umen elahu, and there is no other, I'm going to use the word again, professional, one who is familiar with the process, capable of doing it, then him, kado laguf, ve'ein sham umen elahu, or to plug the plug in the barrel or the basket, right? And there is no one to do so. Pashtano laha'alot min hamisra, the flax to be brought up from the soaking pool. V'tsamro laha'alot min hayoreh, or his dyeing of wool to bring it up from the cauldron. Ve'ein sham uman elahu, and there is no other individual to do so. Hare ze ya'aseh b'tzin'ah. It should be done, but
The
in,
Avel should do it
okay, the
himself.
person in private. Okay. Yeter al kain, all the more so, says Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Im haya omen l'rabim, if he was a professional, so to speak, a person whose occupation was for the benefit of the community, for the many. For example, this usapar, he was a barber, ubalan, or he was a bath attendant. The rabim, for the many, v'higia et haregel, and it came the time of the holiday. Ve'ein sham uman elahu, and there is no other professional, no other person who could do that similar job. Hare ze ya'aseh, he should do so. Now we get to another kind of,
Even though that's in public.
okay, and it's public, and people would know he was a avel. Nevertheless, it's case. All right, now we get to three kinds of farming situations. Okay, right? Ha'arisin, the tenant farmers, who usually work for a percentage of the crop. V'hachakirin, and these are leasing farmers who get a fixed amount of the crop. Okay, v'hakablanin, and these are contract farmers who work and get paid money for what they do. Hare elu yasu, they should do achirim b'shvilan, and others do for them. Hachamirin v'hagmalin v'hasapanin, but if he's a donkey driver or a camel driver or a sailor, hare elu lo yasu, they cannot do their particular task. V'im hayu muchkarin, and if they were leased, or muchsharin, or if they were, in a sense, hired by leased or hired, okay, perhaps by a contract, okay, eitzel achirim, by others, hare elu ya'asu, then they need to do what they need to do.
He's Hertz rent a donkey.
Mhm. Okay, Sachir Yom, a day worker, okay, gets paid by the day. Afilu ba'ir acheret, even if it's in another city, and in that other city, they would not know if necessarily if he's an Aven. Okay,
Here he, theoretically, he's in One, but if he's in Boca when the person that died is in Brooklyn, he can't be Metapo with the mace. Nevertheless, he's still in One.
all right, that's a little more than, right? Lo ya'aseh, cannot do. Haitam malechet acherim biado, if he had the work of others in his hand, right? Afal pisha bekabolet lo ya'aseh, even though by contract, okay, he doesn't do it. Afal pisha bekabolet v'lo mibai she'ina bekabolet. And we say here that even despite the fact that it's maybe a contract, or even if he doesn't have a contract. The Gemara challenges, Adraba, kibolet b'didei dami. If he has a contract, it's like his own. Don't we compare it to that? Ela ema bein kibolet bein she'ena kibolet lo ya'aseh. Whether there's a contract or not a contract, he doesn't do. Hayta melachto biyad achirim. If the work was done by the others. Bebeito lo ya'asu. In his home, should not be done. Bebeit acher, in another house, ya'asu. It's to be done. Now, we're going to get another story.
It sounds like a real problem, because then you have people that are strangers, he's in another city, and they're expecting him to work, and here's this lousy Jew who doesn't show up to work.
Well, the question is, no, the implication would seem to be the question of whether if he works in the other city, whether it's permitted for him to work
Right.
when
and
they
they're saying
don't
it's not
know.
permitted.
Well, he basically is working with Jews, and he says, I'm a novel, I can't come in.
But it says whether they know it or not.
No,
No, that's a separate item.
that-
That's
not
a separate
this.
item.
This is, he is informed that that his relative is dead in another place. So even
Okay.
though one might assume he can't go and do anything about it, he's in Brooklyn.
Right.
Nonetheless, he's considered a
Well, I
non
don't know.
and he has to stop work.
Okay, Miriam Berei de Rabin, Umar Berei de Rab Acha Berei de Rabba. So we have two individuals here. Havilaho Hahu Gamla, the two of them had a team of oxen. Gamla de Tura Bahade Hadade. Each of them owned one ox and they worked together. There was a partnership, okay, with these two oxen. What happened? Itra Bay Milta. Something occurred. In other words, a death occurred for one of them. What did he do? Bamar Berei de Rab Acha Berei de Rabba. Okay, a death occurred in his family, right? Upaske legamle, and he detached his ox from the team. Okay, Amar Rav Ashi, says Rav Ashi, Gavra Rabba Kemar Berei de Rav Acha Avid Hachi, a great person like Rabba Bar, etc., did that. Nehi day lochiyesh. It's one thing that for his own loss, about being he shouldn't be suspect. Ada acherim lochiyesh, but for a loss for other people, okay, particularly his partner, okay, shouldn't he be
Worried about that.
suspect, concerned? Vahatanya, but here it's taught. Im hayu muskarim o mukarim, if they were leased or hired, etzel achirim, hare elu ya'asu, that they should do. V'hu savar adam chashuv shani, but he was of the opinion that an important person should act differently. Namely, while it's permitted, in his case, he has to show a different example and therefore refrain. Okay, and tomorrow we'll pick up with Amar Shmuel on the top of Yud Bet. It's a long Gemara tomorrow. Okay, everybody take care. All right.
Have a good day.